Cousins leading the game-winning drive and then letting the media know about it afterward. You like that? You like that?
Oh, Max, you're trying to wind people up here to start the show. Not everybody loves you-know-who. You-know-who has a new home. Tell you who that and where that is, and who it's with in a moment. Good morning, everybody. Bobby Carpenter played football at Ohio State and with the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, and he's been an analyst for SiriusXM for a while now. He'll join us at 12 noon to talk about the Ohio State guys and the draft in general. Dwayne Simpkins is the head basketball coach at American University. He's doing a great job. I think Dwayne's going to be a candidate for a much bigger job sooner rather than later. But Dwayne will be with us today to talk Final Four, but also go down memory lane a little bit, regarding his days in College Park playing for Gary Williams in Gary's first few years at Maryland, on Gary's first really good teams at Maryland as well. Max is with me, and yes, Kirk Cousins has signed, one of the big named remaining free agents that haven't signed, inked a deal with the Raiders, apparently overnight. Adam Schefter broke the news this morning, terms not available. But if you know anything about the Raiders situation, there's a lot that makes sense about this. Number one is Clint Kubiak is going to be a head coach for the first time, coming from Seattle, where he was the offensive coordinator. Clint Kubiak was with Kirk for multiple years in Minnesota, and Kirk was very productive with Clint, both in Clint's role as a quarterbacks coach for a couple of years and then as an offensive coordinator in 2021 when Kirk threw 33 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. Number two is Fernando Mendoza has been compared to Kirk Cousins, a taller version of Kirk Cousins, but the two things they have very much in common is that they are tremendous when it comes to accuracy, throwing the football. And I can imagine that Kirk at 37 years old wants to start, and I think he will, because Clint Kubiak said very recently the best situation for him with a young quarterback is to not have to play the young quarterback right away. And Kirk is the perfect guy to sit behind for a Fernando Mendoza because their games are very similar. And Kirk obviously is a phenomenal teammate and will be a great example. But I know this about him because I talked to him about this about a month ago. He wants to start. He wants to play. He wants to start. I can't imagine that he is headed to Vegas without the promise that he's going to be the starting quarterback in 2026. Now, he has to maintain a level of play that allows him to stay in that role, but he wasn't going there to compete with Mendoza for opening day. That's my guess. I'm sure they'll position it that way, but Kubiak's already said, wants somebody to come in, a veteran quarterback, so that Fernando Mendoza doesn't have to play, that he can sit and learn behind somebody. The Raiders, they're not, exceptionally talented. They do have a ridiculously talented tight end in Brock Bowers. They've got Ashton Genty in the backfield. They've upgraded their offensive line in free agency, Tyler Linderbaum at center. They added one of Kirk's favorite guys in Minnesota, a guy that he thought was coming along and would be a good receiver, Jalen Naylor. But they don't have great receivers. They've got Trey Tucker and now Jalen Naylor, Jack Beck. But defensively, as of now, Max Crosby is back. They added Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Kwity Paye, and they've got a completely new coaching staff with Clint Kubiak as the head coach, and I'm sure he will be not only the head coach but the primary play caller as well. So there's your Kirk news. We don't have to go a lot further than that, but yes, if you're wondering, I will be paying attention to the Raiders and rooting for Kirk to succeed in Vegas. It's the perfect scenario. He's outside of the conference. You can root for him in a very difficult division. But I would imagine, again, that he is going to be the starting quarterback and Mendoza's going to sit behind him and learn unless it becomes so obvious. Look, we've heard many times before from coaches over the years, you can't fool the locker room. If Mendoza's ready and it's obvious that he's ready and he is ahead of where he should be, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Kubiak to put him in there. And apparently he had a lights out pro day at Indiana yesterday. I think Mendoza throws the ball as well as anybody does. I mean, the dude can flat out sling it, and he's so accurate, naturally accurate. He's 6'5", 6'6", and I think he's more mobile than he gets credit. Not just because of the QB draw, touchdown that gave them the national championship for all intents and purposes, but he's elusive, more so than you would think at his size. So I actually am a Mendoza fan. Now, there's the personality part of it, and there's something that going on there, but clearly he's smart, and clearly he can do it from a talent standpoint. Is he what Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May were at the top of the 24 draft? No, but I think that he's got a better upside than Cam Ward, and I liked Cam Ward last year. We'll see. So that is some big news out of the NFL this morning. By the way, the other NFL news, I'm sure you saw this, Max. Puka Nacua has checked into rehab. Apparently, there are some lawsuits against Nacua out there for gender violence, assault and battery, negligence, and there is, potentially an alcohol problem with Puka Nacua. So he's checking into rehab. We've had a rehab kind of week with Tiger and Nacua. Man, for those of you that primarily follow our team and don't watch a lot of the rest of the league until maybe playoff time, Puka Nacua is a superstar wide receiver. An absolute superstar wide receiver, taken in the 5th round of the 2023 draft out of BYU. 129 catches last year for 1,715 yards and 10 touchdowns. He catches everything. He is a physical beast. For his size, he is so physical with his hands, with his body after the catch. I don't know where, the advanced numbers had him at the end of the year last year at receiver, but I'm going to guess, let's see if I can find it. We'll just take PFF's rankings of wide receivers, in 2025. He's got to be at the top, right? Smith-Njigba, maybe? No, Nacua was number 1. PFF graded Nacua out to be the best receiver in the league in 2025, followed by JSN. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, and Drake London came in at 5th, at least per the PFF grading in 2025. Drake London really is a big-time receiver, too. Big-time receiver. But Nacua, hopefully he gets the help he needs because the Rams clearly look like the favorite. Going in for whatever it's worth. It's the NFL. But that roster is ridiculous. Ben has in his latest mock, and we'll talk about it with him tomorrow. He plays with it a little bit and has Washington trading back to 13 with the Rams. By the way, that was the pick, that Rams pick that they acquired from Atlanta, or was that with Baltimore with Atlanta last year? But they have a pick at 13, and we know that the Rams historically have been kind of allergic to draft picks. They don't mind moving them, and he had Washington trading back 6 spots so that the Rams could jump up and select Jeremiah Love at number 7. Washington picks up a second and a later round pick in the process. But that roster for the Rams right now with Nacua, Devontae Adams, they've got Kyron Williams in the backfield. But what they were like defensively at the end of last year, well, really through the middle portion of the year, they actually got a little bit weaker defensively as the season went on. But yeah, adding Trent McDuffie in the trade, they just have to improve their special teams because really, I can't remember the last time we said this about an NFL season, but a team's special teams, the Rams, pretty much cost them a Super Bowl last year. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, they had special teams issues all season long. They replaced their special teams coach late in the season. But giving up that punt return for a touchdown to Rashid Shaheed in that Thursday night game late in the season at Seattle cost them the 1 seed. There's no doubt about that. And then it just kind of got flukish from there. And then they had the fumbled punt return in the NFC Championship game and what was another close loss. All right. I want to talk about what the Wizards did last night. Not so much their 153 to 131 loss to the 76ers, but the April Fool's prank that they pulled on some poor soul last night at Capital One. For those of you that didn't see it, first of all, the Wizards, gave up another, 150 plus. They've done it now 3 or 4 times this year. It's amazing. I went back and looked at something. The average NBA points allowed for the worst team in the league right now is Utah. They give up 125.4 points per game. And then it's the Wizards following that at 124.3. If you go back just 10 years, to the 2015-2016 regular season, the worst team in the league defensively during that season was hold on, where is it? I had it up a second ago. Was Sacramento. They allowed 109 points. It's a 15-point difference in 10 years. That's crazy that the NBA's gotten to that point. The reason for it is twofold. One, we have more teams tanking, giving up outrageous amounts of points in games. So you have that issue as well. But we've also now got a league in which it's really hard to guard like maybe 40 guys in the league minimum. It doesn't matter what you do defensively. It's really hard. That's why when the discussion about Aiyuk Jr. and the fact that he doesn't necessarily enjoy defense at this point in his career, which is true, but boy, can he score for a college point guard at 6'3". It's really hard for almost anybody to stop anybody in today's NBA. If you're guarding a really prolific offensive player, it's just hard. I mean, this has been going on for a while, but without a double team, it's really hard to stop somebody one-on-one. It just doesn't happen that much. There are a couple of guys. I mean, I've seen Jaylen Brown certainly in the playoffs in lockdown mode, but it's really hard to stop the top scorers in the NBA. There's just too much floor that you have to guard now in today's game. It didn't used to be that way. But with the best scorers in the game, you pretty much have to pick them up with so much floor behind you. But anyway, what happened last night on April Fool's Day is they blindfolded some poor dude, put him at half court and said, hey, you're going to shoot a half court shot blindfolded. If you make it, it's worth $10,000. How it played out when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980 and the team980.com.
This is the one, though. Jackson, it's all on you. This might be history if you get this done. For $10,000. Oh, my.
Yes, sir.
Somebody's rich! The mascots are going crazy. The contestants going crazy. The crowd is going crazy. Jackson, oh my gosh. You didn't see it. We all saw it. You want to see it? All right, take a look at the screen for the replay. That was crazy.
Ha ha. April Fools. Jack got pulled onto the floor as a fan, blindfolded, shot a half-court shot. You heard the sirens go off and everybody celebrating. And then they made him look at the replay of it, and he wasn't close. Actually, the shot was online. It was just high off the top of the backboard. And they told him, yeah, you're not rich. By the way, tough to get rich on $10,000. You're not rich. The $10,000 actually isn't yours. But we've got an autographed jersey and a pair of courtside seats to a game next year. So I saw this morning, and I was like, you know, you've got so few fans right now. You've got the fewest number of fans of any major team in the market. And you could potentially offend your few fans with this and maybe future fans. Now, I don't think there's anything lasting from this in all seriousness. And I wasn't truly offended, and I'm a Wizards fan. But I thought this is like one of those things that's kind of risky, because there will be a lot of people that will say, that's actually off-putting for a team that's as bad as your team, that's been tanking for 3 years, to make somebody feel like they had won something and then take it away from him, even if it is April Fool's Day. And by the way, you know, the gift that they gave him, tickets to a game next year, reminds me of what my good friend Tom Lavero said when they cut DJ Swearinger on Christmas Eve all the way back in whatever year that was, 2018, 2017. And Tommy said if they really wanted to punish him, they would have made him stay with the organization. If they really wanted to give this guy, you know, something to replace the idea that he had $10,000 in his pocket and now he doesn't, they wouldn't give him tickets to a Wizards game, no matter where the seats are. Although next year's team should be much better. Now, I have a question for you, Max. What are the chances that this dude was in on it? Because this is a bit mean-spirited. I don't care about the day. This is somebody that they made think for about a minute he had just won $10,000, that he had just blindfolded, made a shot from half court. Is it possible? Is it possible that this guy was in on it?
It's certainly possible, but I don't know. Given the fact that it's April Fool's Day, I think that you got to be at least a little bit on your toes. I don't know. I like the consolation of them giving him the courtside seats, as long as he gets to, you know, pick which game he's going to. But if they're like, hey, you're going to Wizards Hornets, and you get to sit courtside.
You got to let him pick, because you're not going to the game for your own team next year. Well, maybe next year. But in the moment right now, you got to let him pick OKC or San Antonio or Boston or somebody like that. You can't give him a game the floor seats to the Kings game next year for putting him through this.
Simply can't. It'd be too would not be worth it.
I am curious. I guarantee you there are people that saw this or are listening to it for the first time that are like, that's just wrong. That is just not cool to do that to somebody, especially when you are literally offending your team with performance night in and night out. Anyway, maybe it's just sort of on brand right now for them, but I don't look. Honestly, it's April Fool's Day. I don't know that it was super funny or super creative, but whatever. They did this to this poor guy. Maybe he's in on the joke and they're not telling us about it, although maybe they should. Although then it's, fabricated and it makes them look, silly. But I bet you that there's some people that were turned off by this and that will, think negatively about the team for doing it. I honestly couldn't care less. I care more about, will Anthony Davis be able to play 65 games next year with Trae Young? And will they get, a top 2 pick at least? Because I don't want to have to sit here and discuss Cameron Boozer or Acuff or Ament. Just want to be able to debate DeBonsa or Peterson. I right now would be DeBonsa for me. I care about the games. I care about that stuff. But I think this was kind of high risk for them to do this. In the moment, I don't think it makes them look funny. It's not terribly creative. And if this guy wasn't a plant, he seemed to be okay with it at the end, but I don't know if there could be lawyers. What do you guys think? If you want to weigh in, have at it. 301-230-0980. Our professional basketball team, officially right now in the standings, the worst team in the NBA. They have pretty much guaranteed themselves, barring some big winning streak that is not going to happen with this group, a bottom 4 finish. They're currently the worst team in the league at 17-59, a half game worse than Brooklyn. So the Wizards in really good shape. They've done a good job in protecting that, top 8 protected pick. And they're going to be in that spot. I mean, they are 3.5 games away from 5th worst, which would risk that pick. So they're in good shape. Man, they've really been awful here recently. I mean, they had the 16-game losing streak. And now they've got another 4-game losing streak. They've lost 20 of their last 21 games. May I mention just one thing about their team? Because I've actually paid a little bit of attention and watched a little bit here and there, especially when they've played some of the better teams on their schedule. Recently, just watching them against the Lakers a little bit, watching them against Avdia the other night. But there are 2 players that I want to mention. Will Riley's really, really good. Like, I think he is, of all of their young players, not counting Sarr, that's kind of a different comp, because Sarr is obviously, massive and tall and a defensive stopper, et cetera. But in terms of their younger wing players, Will Riley has a chance, man, to become a really, really good player. I mean, he does things at 6'9", 6'10", that are special. He can score. He can create. He can shoot. I really like Will Riley and the future of Will Riley. He was a later round pick last year at Illinois, and more of a role player at Illinois, the team that's in the Final Four. And just one other name mention, you've really got to be paying attention to be able to debate me on this. It's very much based on just a couple of the games that I've watched him. And now I'm looking at him last night in his box score. But Jaden Hardy, who came from Dallas as part of the Anthony Davis trade, he was a 2nd-round pick back in 2022 from out of I don't know where he went to school, to be honest with you. But I like him as a shooter. And I mentioned this to probably to Chase Hughes. We had him on after that trade. And I said, watching him, this dude's got a really good stroke. And I looked up, he shot 37% last year from behind the arc. With the Wizards, he's shooting over 42% from behind the 3-point line. He actually may be a nice little addition as part of the Anthony Davis trade that maybe people weren't expecting. Last night, he was 1 for 8 from behind the arc, but that's his worst game of the season from behind the arc after being acquired by Dallas. He was 1 for 8. He had a game a couple of weeks ago in New York against the Knicks where, let me just find it, because he was just on fire. Yeah, he had 25 points, and he was 7 of 13 from behind the arc. He's got a great stroke. And he's a spot up shooter off of Trae Young and some of that stuff. Like, I could definitely see him being a part of this thing moving forward because he can shoot it. But that's it. If you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980 on the Wizards little joke. Let's hit the what do you got sounder. So next year, there will be a much bigger celebration of this. But last night was the 24-year anniversary of Maryland's national championship win over Indiana. That blows me away that it's been 24 years since that night in Atlanta. A very, very special night all time for Maryland basketball fans. The one national championship they have following the first Final Four appearance the year before. So next year, there will be a big celebration of it. There was at the 10-year anniversary. I think there was at the 15 and maybe 20, but 25 is special. And Gary will certainly be a big part of everything they do next year to celebrate that. But I was thinking about this as a Maryland basketball fan, and that really was the end of what I thought was going to be the beginning of a major run of becoming not a blue blood, but becoming a consistent, top 10 powerhouse program. And it didn't happen that way. The next year, they got back to the Sweet 16 in 2003, and they lost a game literally that they could have won against Michigan State in the Sweet 16 when Blake's 25-footer was just short or just off the back iron, actually. They could have gone on to an Elite Eight game in that second year. But after that Sweet 16 appearance, there was, a lot of, second round exits from the tournament and several years in which they didn't make the tournament. Turgeon's first 3 years, they were not a tournament team. And then they got on a roll and became kind of a consistent tournament team under Turgeon during that stretch where he was essentially, if you count 2020 in the tournament, 6 of 7 years, but he only got to the Sweet 16 once. And then we had last year, Kevin Willard take Maryland to the Sweet 16. During that next stretch, and and Gary recruited well off the national championship team and continued to coach the team at a high level. The league was tough. They had a couple of devastating second round losses. The biggest being in 2010 when they were the ACC regular season co-champs with Duke, and they lost to Michigan State at the buzzer. Corey Lucius hit a shot at the buzzer. Maryland's the field had opened up. Kansas had been eliminated. Northern Iowa had won. And there was a path back to another Final Four in 2010 with a Maryland team that was very good that year with Gravis Vasquez and Eric Hayes and Landon Milborn and a young center who played very well for Maryland as well. And they had a shot that year. But man, 24 years is forever ago. And I think about that all the time, about how I felt during that stretch. I mean, Gary had just had a massive run. And in that moment, Maryland was easily a top 10 program in America. And they had been that before. They had been that during Lefty's, tenure in the 70s into the early 80s. They had always been thought of as a top 10, top 15 college basketball program. Even when Georgetown was maybe the preeminent college basketball program, brand-wise for sure, in the country, Maryland was certainly a top 20 program, worst case, during those years. And then Gary came along and they had just an incredible run of 11 straight years in the tournament, many Sweet 16s, 2 Final Fours, and a national championship. And, Maryland had elevated almost to the level of Duke in the ACC. That rivalry was a real deal. And I thought after the national championship, this is going to be the way it is for a long time. And it wasn't. I mean, just 3 Sweet 16s since the national championship. And that's why when you hear people like me during a season like the one we just had, and I had a lot of people say, who do you think you are? I mean, you can't have a losing season every once in a while. I get that. I understand that. Like, I just kind of followed the recent, NC State saga. Will Wade was coaching at NC State this year. They got to the tournament. They lost in the first 4 to Texas, who went on to the Sweet 16, where they lost to Purdue. And Will Wade, who left LSU in shambles, is returning to LSU. By the way, in a very, very ugly sort of way. He had his agent email Boo Corrigan, the NC State athletic director, to tell him that he was out literally a week after he said, I'm not going anywhere. That's college sports, and that's the way it is right now. But that guy is truly, unprofessional and has been throughout his career. Good coach, though, can really coach. But NC State used to be a program that was thought to be kind of, again, not Kansas, Kentucky, Carolina, or Duke or UCLA, but they had won multiple national championships. And Herb Sendek had coached them to tournament after tournament, but they just didn't get it done when they got to the tournament. And they let him go. And it's been basically out in the wilderness ever since. And now you got a guy, leaving NC State to go back to LSU, which never was considered to be, a basketball school, although more so than a lot of SEC schools, Maravich, Shaq, et cetera. They had their runs. They had Final Fours with Dale Brown as their coach in the 80s. But you can lose it quickly, man. And in this day and age with portal and NIL and everything that's going on, man, you can become irrelevant pretty quickly in college sports. And not that Maryland's been irrelevant during the 24 years since the national championship, but for people like me, it certainly isn't what we thought would happen. And look, there were a lot of winning seasons and good seasons, and Gary won an ACC regular season title and won an ACC tournament title, beating Duke in both of those instances to win an ACC tournament in 2004, and then to win to also go on to win the regular season, beating Duke at home in 2010. And there were so many memorable wins and seasons in which they were ranked high. I mean, Mark had the Terps, in the top 10 multiple times, 3 or 4 different seasons. They were ranked in the top 10. And Kevin Willard had them finish in the top 10 last year, even though they lost their Sweet 16 game to Florida. But man, 24 years ago seems like yesterday, but at the same time, in many ways, it doesn't, because we've been far from out in the wilderness, but it certainly didn't turn out to be what we thought it would be in terms of contending year after year for Final Fours and national championships. Gary had some teams that certainly were capable of that. The 2010 team, they lost a game basically at the buzzer to Butler in the second round. That was a 4-seed team that was really good. But yeah, just some painful losses and not a lot of March success since the national championship season 24 years ago. More of a celebration next year for sure. There's no doubt about that. All right, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Time for an NCAA Final Four spot.
show next hour. Victor Wembanyama. Will San Antonio win a title with this freak? He did something last night that's never been done. Talk about that coming up in a few minutes. But Little wanted to weigh in on the Wizards' prank last night, pranking a gentleman by blindfolding the guy at half court, telling him to shoot a half court shot for $10,000, and then, setting off the sirens and the celebration music, only to then show him the replay of the shot going awry. Sorry, pal, you didn't win $10,000, even though you thought you did there for about a minute and a half. But we've got an autographed jersey, and we've got a pair of courtside tickets to a game next year. Little, go ahead.
Coach, ain't that something, man? I tell you, I've been to the games many times and seen people go for it. Look, and my number never get drawn. But look, this is why I called to tell you. I told you about a month ago about Hardy. Now, I'm going to tell you who the kid remind me of, man. Max, I lost Max. Shout out to Mad Max. Coach, you remember Liddell Eccles coming off the bench for the Bullets?
Yep.
L.A. Boulay. Le Boulay, as the legend would say, Le Boulay. Hey, Liddell Eccles was getting buckets, and this kid Hardy got that same kind of gameplay, man. That's all I got for you, Coach. God bless you. Stay up, man.
Okay, I thought he was going to weigh in on the prank. Is that what Mark and Largo wants to do? Mark and Largo, go ahead.
The prank is ridiculous, man. I mean, we are the most losing franchise in sports, period. And we're doing something like this. I kind of say it's kind of a low ball. I wouldn't have done that. I definitely wouldn't have done that. And I just wish they would have had better class for themselves and stuff like that. By the way, Kevin, let me know when you're talking about Brandon Aiyuk again. I got something to spur with you for, which may be the problem of why I was so angry at Adam Peters. It's because of your
Go
son.
ahead.
That's
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Your son? Oh, Kyle Shanahan. The lunatic. Him. I wouldn't go after Brandon Aiyuk. I would leave Brandon Aiyuk alone. I think if I'm Washington, you got to go forward with everything else. That being said, I think the way Kyle Shanahan has handled this has been ridiculous. And I'm sick and tired of Kyle Shanahan when he doesn't like a player, he goes scorched earth to do whatever he wants to show that he acts like he's a broken down woman getting out of a relationship.
Who else has he gone scorched earth on? I'm forgetting. I'm not.
Robert Griffin III.
I mean, everybody in the building kind of went scorched earth. Remember,
okay,
they
yeah, but did he have to do that going out the door?
Well, what did he do going out the door? Kyle's never really bashed RG3 publicly.
Of course he's not going to bash him publicly because that'll make him look obvious. But we know it's
him. He's kind of bashed Aiyuk. I thought this was the premise of what you were discussing, that Kyle, when he doesn't get his way, acts like a child.
Alone. Well, the reason why I would leave Aiyuk alone is because Kyle's going to make this ridiculous for Washington. He really is. And if I was Washington, and I'm quite sure Adam Peters, and that's one of the reasons why I couldn't stand Adam Peters, because I couldn't stand Kyle Shanahan. So now I've re-upped, and that's probably why I can't stand Adam Peters. It's because of Kyle Shanahan. There's a lot of us that feel this way around here.
Yeah.
But I do understand that.
What do you want me to say to that? I mean, as far as how Kyle's handling the Brandon Aiyuk situation specifically, it's not just Kyle, it's ownership and the general manager, John Lynch, as well. It's very obvious that they feel like Brandon Aiyuk was extremely unprofessional and screwed them. Now, they got back at him in a very hurtful way by voiding over $30 million of his contract, which, by the way, he didn't fight, nor did the NFLPA take up the cause on his behalf, which was very odd. This whole situation is truly like borderline unprecedented. Somebody walking away from that much money without fighting for it. So there's clearly a feeling like we got screwed by this guy. This guy was outrageously unprofessional, so we don't owe him any favors. If it's my organization as a fan, I don't want my team to do other teams, bidding and do what's best for other teams to turn him loose so that he can sign with somebody and have a full off season. How does that help me? Why should I want to help him or another team specifically in this situation where, again, I don't have all the facts, nor do you, but it certainly would appear that they feel like this guy completely screwed them, was incredibly unprofessional, and they don't owe him anything. Now, as far as Kyle Shanahan's track record with that, you'd have to point to specific examples where publicly he's been, as direct with respect to his feelings towards this player. I'm not saying that there aren't other examples. I'm not thinking of any right off the top of my head. All right. He did not do that with RG3 publicly. Nobody really did it publicly. There was a lot of behind the scenes backstabbing, but the fact that the noise was so loud in 2013 and 2014 told a lot of us, where there's smoke, there's fire. And then, we've certainly heard many of those stories publicly now in the years following it, but I don't remember Kyle publicly submarining RG3. Jay publicly submarined RG3 worse than anybody in that 2014 season, his first year, at the end of the year, when, he did that interview with the guy from NFL.com. I'm forgetting who it was, but he really was harsh in his criticism towards Robert. I remember, and I've talked to Jay about that. He's like, I had reached the end, my wit's end. I probably shouldn't have done and said some of the things I said, but it was really, it had gotten to that point. I'll never forget Coach Thompson saying about Jay unleashing on the player publicly. He said, that was probably not the right way to handle it. No matter how frustrated you get, you can't do that publicly. But man, was that telling, that particular, story that was written about him. But I don't know. Is there anything else on Kyle other than you don't like him?
He left.
Yeah. I'd take Kyle I would have taken Kyle as my head coach for the last 8 years, and the results he was able to generate. He's flat out one of the best offensive minds we've had in football this century, really. I mean, even going back to his days in Houston and obviously his days here as well. The Brandon Aiyuk situation is really going to be interesting because I don't think the 49ers are going to do him. But remember, it's twofold. It's not just doing him a favor by turning him loose. It's doing the team that signs him a favor. Why help Washington out by giving them a whole off season with Aiyuk rather than maybe turning him loose right before training camp? And then he's got, 3 weeks to get himself ready in a new offense with new teammates. I still think the chances of him landing here are at least 50-50, if not slightly more than that. But something that I considered the other day, and I think I mentioned it on the show either yesterday or the day before, and that is, I really wonder what Jaden Daniels truly thinks. Let's just say that he's all in on Brandon Aiyuk becoming a teammate. If he is, there's going to be added pressure on Jaden. Number one, he vouched for him. Number two, Brandon Aiyuk in a prove-it year is going to he's going to want the ball fed to him. And Jaden's going to probably, feel the pressure from a guy like Aiyuk to feed him the ball. I don't know if that puts him in the best situation in a new offense. And then I think there's also the possibility that while we're all sitting here contemplating that possibility of Aiyuk coming to Washington, that behind the scenes, and I haven't heard this, I've not heard this, but it's possible that Adam Peters and Jaden Daniels are like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We know he's nuts. And Jaden might publicly show great support for his friend, but privately may say, I don't want him. He's not the right fit for our culture and our locker room. And Adam Peters might be saying, I'm glad you said that because there's no way I'm signing him. There's a lot that could be going on behind the scenes that we don't know about when you have a situation like this where there's a lot of unknown. Like, it does appear that it's borderline unprecedented in terms of what he did. Going AWOL with that much money owed to him and the minor commitment it would have taken for him to collect all of that money. That's what's unprecedented, to have all of that money left on the deal and to do the thing that was minimal in commitment. Show up at twice a month to the building and get your knee checked to see how the rehab's going. If he does that, he's able to collect every single guaranteed for injury dollar that is owed to him. And he didn't do that. And that's why they were able to void over $30 million left on his deal. And then he didn't fight it. The NFLPA didn't fight it. That's pretty telling about who's at fault in this situation. Now, why did he feel that way? Is it because he's mentally unstable and he's got major issues? Or did he get to the point where he really felt like the 49ers did something that was not right towards him and he was standing his ground? Still, it's bad judgment at the very least, even if you were hurt by something or felt like something was done in which you couldn't work with Kyle Shanahan or any of these people anymore. It's still bad judgment to throw away $30+ million by, avoiding a team in which you only had to show up and post twice a month and get your knee looked at. Crazy situation. I don't know. We will have great debates about this. If and when he gets released, he's going to be released. Nobody's going to trade for him. I just think that seems like such a long shot possibility. The idea that somebody's going to give up a pick and take on $27 million in base salary of his current contract. If you trade something for him, you're trading for him and his current contract. If he gets released, you sign him and you structure your own deal. Now, he gets a say in that too, and there may be some competition for him. Who knows? But nobody is signing him to anything other than a prove-it deal. Mike Giannetti from Spot Track was on with us and said the market right now for him is 13 to 14 million base, but he thinks that very likely it'll be less than that and very much highly incentivized to get to a number north of 13 or 14 million for a year. And you're just not taking on that contract and giving up a day 3 pick. Dante Whitner, who was on the show, Max, 3 weeks ago, former 49er, former Skin too, podcast covering the 49ers. He was very sort of anti-Brandon Aiyuk in this thing. But and apparently he also said the 49ers don't even care about the pick. He said this yesterday, I think, on his podcast. 49ers don't care about the pick. This has become true, vindictiveness. They really felt wronged by Brandon Aiyuk, and they don't want to help him or anybody else, and they don't care what it makes him look like. So the earliest date, more likely than not, would be June 2nd, post-June 1 cut, even though they could designate it that way now. And who knows? They may wait until training camp to release him. Although, if he's on the roster, that's one less body that isn't with them during their off-season of OTAs, mini camps, etc. Victor Wembanyama's had 2 unbelievable games back-to-back. I think the Spurs, even with a team with no playoff experience, have to be considered a legitimate NBA championship contender because this guy may be an all-time basketball freak. More on him next.
The thing about your group, the only thing that you lack is something that is mentioned anytime we look at the playoffs. And that's through the years, as you well know, history says, well, you kind of need to take your lumps. You need to have been there. The more I watch you, the more I think, I don't think so. I feel like you are all ready to go. What's your sense of that? The value of something that you all just don't have together yet?
Yeah, we don't have experience, right? Screw it. I mean, that's all we got. We're not going to play any different way just because it is this way. I mean, we're still going to play 100% and go to try to win this championship.
Sure.
Screw it.
Victor Wembanyama last night on with Scott on his Sports Center following a night in which he went for 41 points and 18 rebounds in just 29 minutes. It had never been done in the history of that organization. By the way, his last two games, all right, 41 points and 16 rebounds in 31 minutes on Monday night against the Bulls. And then last night, 41 and 18 with, oh, by the way, 3 block shots in the game as well in 29 minutes. Hey, guys, have you watched Victor Wembanyama this year? I know a lot of you don't pay attention to the NBA in the regular season. Some of you don't even care about the playoffs. He is, I think, honestly, the all-time freak. Like, I don't know how you stop Victor Wembanyama. He is 7'5" tall, dribbles like a guard, shoots like a guard, is absolutely impossible to score on at the rim because he is a wall batting everything right back at a shooter. And then around the rim, forget about it. With his size and with his length, he dunks from the middle of the paint. Like, he doesn't have to get near the rim to dunk. He can be, a big step just inside the free throw line, and he's dunking over you from that spot. This is going to be kind of the test for a team that not only missed the playoffs last year, they haven't been to the playoffs in 6 years. The Spurs built it up from the ground floor. They've been a bad franchise. But then in 2023, they had the lottery go their way. I was thinking just about, can you imagine if the Wizards, for the first time in their lives, in our lives, had gotten lucky in an NBA draft lottery and Victor Wembanyama was in our town? I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the Wizards have always been the sleeping giant, that they've been the team that if they ever legitimately became an NBA championship contender over a period of time, they would be the number 2 in this town and it wouldn't be close. We're a basketball town. Root everywhere. That's our roots. We love football and we love our football team more than any other team. But basketball is what more people participate in, play in, ref in, coach in than any other sport in our city. And if our NBA team became a championship contender in an era in which the NBA has become popular not only in the U.S., but globally, it's the second biggest global sport behind soccer in the world, or certainly league, I should say, because I know cricket has a mass following as well. But we've missed out on the NBA's, banner years. It's been 47 years since the Wizards were involved in anything remotely resembling championship contention. And we've missed out. Tommy's pointed this out so many times over the years. We missed out on the Magic Bird era. Then we missed out on the LeBron era, the Michael era. And then we missed out on the LeBron era. Now, maybe with what they've done the last 3 years, they can participate in the next era, which is going to be the Wembanyama era. Now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder will have something to say about that. Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray, will have something to say about that when we get to the postseason. But in terms of the player, like, this guy is an alien that's landed in this league. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not sure there is a player in any of the major team sports with a bigger ceiling than Victor Wembanyama right now. Not in the NFL, not in the NHL, not that I know of. And maybe Ohtani's the only one you can point to in the other three major sports. This guy is very much in the MVP conversation with SGA and with Luka. I think SGA is going to win his second. That's where the odds are right now, and he continues to put up ridiculous nights. He had 47 the other night against the Pistons in an overtime win. But Wembanyama right now is averaging 24.7 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, and is averaging 3.1 blocked shots a game. He's shooting over 50% from the floor. He shoots 35% from behind the arc. And by the way, don't foul him. He's an 83% free throw shooter. Now, can the Spurs win a title when they haven't even been to a playoff series or played in a playoff game? It's not just Wembanyama on the team that doesn't have playoff experience. Stefan Castle, who has been tremendous since being picked number 4 overall in the 2024 draft. Rishase, the number 1 pick to Atlanta, certainly if you redrafted it, it'd probably be Castle 1, Sarr 2. I don't think anybody gets picked ahead of Sarr in that particular draft. But Castle hasn't played in a playoff game. They do have a couple of players on the roster that have played in playoff games. And one player in particular, I can't believe, every time I see him, he's still in the league at 34 years old. But Harrison Barnes, if you recall, was a part of those early Golden State teams that won titles. He's on the roster and he plays. Good player, North Carolina, many years ago now. Now, in the history of this league, a league that historically you've got to earn your way through several years of playoff pain before you can win a title. Now, Oklahoma City didn't have to lose a lot in the postseason before they won it last year, but they did lose in the postseason. And in a long drawn out second round series the year before. But that was a very young team that really won it earlier than we've seen teams win it in really the history of the league. I mean, the history of the NBA says that only 6 times has a team gone from no playoffs to actually a championship. Now, in some of those cases, the no playoffs where a team was super injured, like the 2022 Warriors. They weren't in the postseason the year before because of injuries, and then they won it in 2022. But they still had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And, they won that series against the Celtics in the title. That's not a comp to this San Antonio team. The 2020 bubble champion Lakers had LeBron James, and Anthony Davis on the team. They weren't in the playoffs, though, the year before. The 2008 Celtics went from no playoffs 2007 to Paul Pierce, Rondo, Kevin Garnett being all together in 2008 and winning the whole thing. The team that you really would look at as sort of a comp for this would be the 77 Portland Trailblazers. That's how far back you have to go. They were not a playoff team the year before. And then Bill Walton, as a very young player, had an MVP season and was dominant in the same way Wembanyama was. And in their very first playoffs, they won the whole thing, beating the 76ers, Dr. J, Daryl Dawkins, and company in the NBA Finals in 77. That would be, the closest comp. The NBA's always been an older team league. We know this, from the Pistons that had to lose to the Bulls before they finally won it. Not only the Bulls, the Pistons that had to lose to the Celtics before they finally won it. The Bulls that had to keep losing in the postseason to teams like the Pistons before they finally won it. And then LeBron's long journey to a title. And of course, he had to do it by teaming up with 2 other superstars to get it done. Can Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs in their first playoff year win the title? I think they can. I think he's such an absolute outlier that they can win the title. Right now, by the way, they're 2 games out of the 1 seed behind Oklahoma City as we sit here with now just 6 games left in the regular season for them. So they've won 10 in a row. They've been rolling. They could get there. But matchups are everything in the NBA playoffs. They really are. Best of 7, though, typically the best team wins. I mean, it's the best part of best of 7 is you don't end up having fluke winners. You know, anything can happen in a game, but anything really can't happen when it's best 4 out of 7. But, man, the West is loaded. The Lakers are playing great basketball right now. Denver all of a sudden is playing great basketball right now. You still have Anthony Edwards. You still have Kevin Durant. They're going to both be in the postseason with Houston, Minnesota and Houston, respectively. So it'll be wild. But can they win the title, San Antonio? Yes, because he's that much of an outlier. And he's going to win MVPs, plural. The only thing that could ultimately stop him is injury, which he had last year. So that's really it. This guy, if you want to be entertained as a sports fan, even if you're not an NBA fan, tune in and watch the San Antonio Spurs with Wembanyama play. I don't know that there's ever been anything like him. Giannis, physically freakish, but never was the shooter and hasn't been that Wembanyama is. Wembanyama is a better ball handler than a lot of guards, and he's nearly 7'5". It's crazy to watch this dude. Man, the French, they've taken over the NBA. The international player has taken over the NBA. When you think about it, SGA Canadian, Wembanyama, obviously foreign, Luka foreign, Jokic foreign. And that'll be a big part of the NBA playoffs. I think he can do it. If you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. What are your thoughts when you watch Victor Wembanyama? And do you think the Spurs can win the title with a team with so little playoff experience? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. Friend of mine, Pat, said, what about Bird? He won it in his second year. I mean, Magic won it in his rookie year too. But the point is that the Lakers were playoff teams before with Kareem and the players they had before. And Bird in his rookie season with the Celtics, they won a series and then lost to the Sixers in the second round. Victor Wembanyama, what do you think of him? And do you think the Spurs can win the whole thing? If you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. He is really unique. I can't think of many players. Like, I remember when Ralph Sampson was in the NBA and, side by side the Twin Towers with him and Hakeem. But even Sampson going back to Virginia, and for those of you that don't remember Ralph Sampson at Virginia, he was a great college basketball player. But he was so freakish at 7'4" with the wingspan that he had, and he could handle the ball. Like, he could and 7'4" get the basket. Get your big, down the post. But Ralph makes the basket. He was a power forward in the NBA. The basket. What'd you say, Max?
You just went really robotic, and then when you said, what did you say? It went right back to normal, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Ralph Sampson was unbelievable in college. I think Victor Wembanyama just looks, like an absolute outlier in team sports right now. Big Tony, go ahead.
Phone. Thought I was in the dead zone. I had to move up a couple 100 yards. I was like, what the heck? Yeah, you went straight ballistic and crazy. Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
Samson, dude, I ain't gonna lie to you. Back in the day with Jeff Lamp, that little baseline jumper Jeff Lamp used to hit, but Samson used to bring the ball up, y'all, for you youngins. Just like Wemby be doing. Samson could bring the ball up, do a little in between the legs, a little spin move. Samson was nasty, but hey, Kim, my boys, I don't know how it happens. I mean, David Robinson gets hurt. We get Duncan. I think Duncan won in his second year, maybe his first year. I don't know. And then they get Sorry again, and then they get Wemby. I don't know. I think the guys just want us to win it. But besides Wemby, Slim, they got Harper and Vassell and Castle and Fox.
Yeah.
Dude, they're all like 6'5", 6'8", and they got arms, for days. I mean, they get so many daggone steals and knockdowns. And Wemby, not even if he's scoring. Like this dude last night, he did a spin move on Wemby, like in the first quarter, Kevin. He did a spin move on Wemby and got Wemby. Wemby barely missed it. He came down on the next play, tried the same thing. Man, Wemby damn near threw it up to the upper deck, man. I said, good God, Kevin, he takes 2 dribbles and he's already at the rim.
I know.
And that's from
with his arms and his height, he literally can reach from almost the free throw line, but certainly a big step inside it. He can reach and dunk from there. I mean, we've never seen this in the NBA. Never.
Hey, Kevin, what do you say? Why not us? I mean, they're just young enough and ignorant enough. Why not us? I mean, hey, put it this way. They done smoked Oklahoma City 3-1 so far, and the only game they lost was because they was coming off a back-to-back, and it was a 1:00 game that they had to play in New York. That's the only reason they lost to Oklahoma City that one game. And now I'll tell you something funny. The team that's been beating them, it's only 2 teams that's beaten them twice already. It was Golden State and somebody else. That's because Steph went for 40 in both games, but that ain't happening again, Jack. Anyway, you take it easy, Greasy, and just watch us win these championships for the next couple years, man.
Well, look at the possible matchups, okay? In the first round, a 2-7 series could be against either Booker and the Suns or Kawhi and the Clippers. And then a second round matchup with the Lakers, more likely than not, or it could be Houston and Durant. And then a Western Conference Finals likely against OKC, although I would not count Denver out. I mean, the West is ridiculous with the playoff.
I mean, they're
matchups.
all loaded. I mean, they could get got, but I ain't worrying about them. If not this year, next year, man.
Yeah. Big Tony with one of his, favorite teams that are not based here in Washington, but all-time championship level teams. It's his move. I mean, if you're good, he's going to root for you. Chris in Bowie. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. You already said it, but I'm going to take it outside of sport or outside the NBA. You already mentioned his name, and that's Ohtani, right? Nobody can hit or pitch at a great level like Ohtani does, right? You said him. The other two players that count, and at least one of them does, is Tiger. Remember, Tiger wasn't just winning here and there; he was winning everywhere, especially as a kid. He wasn't a professional before he won the Masters or he won every single tournament he was in. So
yeah, but here's what I would say. Look, I don't think non-golf fans don't understand Tiger's dominance like it is all time. But Jack was the same way when he came around. I'm looking at Victor Wembanyama, and I'm wondering, have we ever seen anything like him? Like what he is able to do on a basketball court, I've never seen done before. He is 7'5" with an outrageous wingspan, and he's athletic. And he can run, he can catch, his hands and feet are together. He can shoot it, he can dribble it. Big Tony just said it. He takes a block shot, catches it, and leads the fast break at 7'5".
Yeah, it's
insane.
The only other person, well, you kind of popped my balloon with that, because the only other person I was going to say, and this goes way back before any of us were ever alive, even though their skill level was different, but that would have been Babe hitting and pitching too. But we know the baseball skill level was different then as it is compared to now. But that's the only person I could think of that was just so great at their sport. Like Wemby is so great at everything he does on offense and defense with the great feet, the great hands, and stuff like that. I can't think of any other NBA player that would compare to Wembanyama.
The other thing too, that if you watch him, he plays hungry. Like he plays like he is one tough. Like this is not, the perception that we used to have, remember, of the international players, the Euro players in particular, that they were soft, they weren't nearly as killer and competitive. That's obviously not true. Just watch Jokic here. But it's funny because we've talked a lot about Jokic in recent years as being, an outlier because, he's basically the best passing big man in the history of the game, but he's also an incredible offensively skilled player as a scorer and shooter. The big difference between Jokic and Wemby is Jokic is nowhere near the defender. Wemby's an absolute game changer defensively. Like if that's all he could do, if he weren't like super gifted offensively, he would still be talking about him as the best and one of the best defensive rim protectors that he's going to become of all time. But then he's just as skilled, if not more so, on offense. It's crazy to watch him. Thanks, Chris. Samaj, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, what's good, man? Thanks, Mac,
for
taking my call. Hey, man, you talking hoops, so you're in my lane with this one. And Kevin, damn it, you might be right, man. He might be such an outlier where he might take us back to the 77 Trailblazers.
Well, remember, Walton was injured his first few years. They weren't a playoff team in any of those first few years. And then when he was healthy, and he wasn't even healthy for that entire season in 76, 77, but when he was healthy, they went from non-playoff team to a title, in 1 year. Yeah. I mean, by the way, I went back and looked at this. They only won 49 games that year, which is ironic because the following season, the Bullets won their first and only title in Washington, and they only won 44 regular season games, but they got hot during the postseason. But Wemby's like just watching him. It really looks like an alien landed in the NBA, and that we've never seen anything like him physically do the things he does on a court. It's unbelievable to watch, which is why you've got to give him a shot. And like Tony said, they've got other really good players around him that all benefit from him being on the floor, clearly.
Roster is loaded. And when the awards go out, he should get MVP. I don't know, SGA might still beat him out, but he definitely should be no less than second. But they should also give front office of the year, GM. And the key to what we're possibly about to see is going to be their young coach. I just heard his name for like the first time in all season, like about yesterday, because I still don't have it locked into memory. I'm not going to sell short the other coaches in the West.
Yeah.
Mitch Johnson, I think if they are going to do it, Kevin,
he's going to have to show his mettle as a head coach, because at some point, you know how it is in the playoffs, teams adjust. And when you're going up against the best coaches, they adjust greatly, and you got to then compensate and then make your adjustments. So I'm sure at some point throughout the playoff run, we're going to see Mitch Johnson's medal, and whether he's up to par to get them a championship. Thanks for taking my call, man, as always.
Yeah, sure.
And give me my logo back, damn it. Have a blessed one.
Yeah. Just get ready. Get ready for Victor Wembanyama to become a massive sports story from this point forward, but especially when we get to mid-April and the NBA playoffs start. Let's go to Ken in Upper Marlboro. What do you make of Victor Wembanyama? Have we ever seen anybody like him? And do you think the Spurs can win the entire thing this spring in Wembanyama's first playoff experience year? Go ahead.
Nothing like him, Kevin. His skill set literally is off the chart for someone to be that big. But what I was looking at and trying to think of who are the experienced players that on that team. If
Harrison
they
Barnes
get in a championship, I thought about them. And then and like the last caller says, literally for a team that young, it's going to come down to coaching. And when the playoffs is a totally different dynamic when the playoffs series actually starts.
Good point.
And it's just so different. But that's why I'm saying it's going to come down to coaching. But they fear being that young. They fear no one. And he is literally. I think he is so keyed up to play against Oklahoma City, probably in the conference title. He is so keyed up. He wants that team. I don't think he wants any other team out there but that team.
Well, they're going to have some battles before they get to that, especially because it's an excellent point. Mitch Johnson, young coach, was part of Popovich's staff in San Antonio. But, adjustments. That's what we always hear in a best of seven, because they will get, their teeth knocked in a game or two. But can they, with him on the floor, is it possible that they can lose 4 out of 7? It hasn't happened a lot this year. Just to give you, he's averaging 3.1 blocks per game right now. Chet Holmgren's second in the league with almost half that. It's absurd what he is doing. Thanks, Ken. Let's go to John in Falls Church. John, go ahead.
2 topics real quick. First is our last caller, the caller before, made a good point, and it's kind of seeming like maybe Wemby is like Michael Jordan taking on the Pistons, where it might take a few times to get through the.
Well, that's the question. Do you think
City.
he's going to have to do that, or can he win it right now?
Well, maybe this is the year. We don't know. The second part is, or what I originally called about was Kareem was every bit as different as Wemby is now for the league. I mean, he was.
But we already had Wilt. We already had Wilt, though, right?
Okay, well, you could say the same thing about Wemby to Kareem. They're each person took what was there before and said, "I'll do a lot more and take it to the next level at this crazy height that's not supposed to be able to do this, with this coordination that's not supposed to be able to do this."
Yeah, I think I know what Kareem was, and I know what he meant to Milwaukee because they won it in his second year, third. What year was it when they won it? I'd have to go back and look. They won the title in, the Bucks. I'll find that. They won the title with Lou Alcindor before he became Kareem as a very young player. But there was already a 7'2" freak in the league named Wilt, who still has numbers that no one's ever going to match in terms of how outlier they are. And maybe Wemby and maybe the comp for Wemby is actually Wilt. But what's different about him now is that, right when you said it, I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. But the league had already seen what Wilt could do at 7'2". The league's never seen a player at 7'5" do what this player does. I don't think the league's ever seen a player over 7 feet, period, that can do what he does from an offensive standpoint. Because almost every 7-footer, now we've had more 7-footers in recent years, certainly over the last 20, be able to stretch the floor, shoot threes. Bill Laimbeer wasn't 7 feet. He was 6'10", 6'11" tops. Kevin Durant is 6'10", 6'11". He's not actually 7 feet. But this is different than Giannis. This is different than anything we've seen in the sport, I think. It's fascinating to watch. John, did you have anything else? Sorry to cut you off.
No. But I my only point, and you're right on everything you said, but I think it's an evolution. Like Kareem or Lou Alcindor did things that Wilt didn't do. Wilt was more physical, but Kareem or he could do anything around the rim. He could shoot from 20 feet if he wanted to. If there was a 3-point line back then, he would have figured out how to do that really well.
Right.
Wemby is taking those things and doing what modern day NBA requires him to do to be an all-time great.
By the way, Lou Alcindor, year 2 in Milwaukee, 70-71. They won the title in his second year. Now, they were in the playoffs his first year, his rookie year, and they played into the Western Conference final because they were in the Western Conference back then. But they won the NBA title in 71. I think they beat the Baltimore Bullets in that final, if I'm not mistaken. I can find what they beat Baltimore. They beat Wes Unseld and Baltimore in 4 straight in the NBA Finals in 1971. Lou Alcindor against Unseld. I know Unseld was very good that year. And by the way, always played Kareem tough. But Kareem had a very good series and they won it in 71. And then, eventually, obviously, his next title came when he was in LA and Magic was a rookie. Thanks, John. If anybody else wants to weigh in, we're talking about just the unbelievable freakishness of Victor Wembanyama. Have you ever seen anything like him as a basketball fan? And can the Spurs, with legitimately no playoff experience to speak of among their best players, can they win it all in their first year in the postseason? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com, 301-230-0980. Those of you on hold, we'll get to your calls next. We'll get back to football at 12. Bobby Carpenter will jump on with us, talk NFL draft. after the game last night, which Victor Wembanyama scored 41 points, grabbed 18 rebounds in just 29 minutes. By the way, at the end of the first quarter, he had 17 and 9. 17 points, 9 rebounds at the end of the first quarter. He played 9 minutes. He had 17 points and 9 rebounds in 9 minutes. That almost seems like impossible. How much of a freak is Victor Wembanyama? Have we ever seen anything like him? If you're not paying attention, pay attention. He's going to become the story of the NBA playoffs and of the late spring and early summer. A lot of people think that they absolutely can win it. No playoff experience whatsoever. It's rarely done in the NBA. And he's got none. Castle's got none. Dylan Harper's got none. Harrison Barnes is on the team. He's the only one with a title. Got to go all the way back to his early days at Golden State. It's going to be rough in the West. OKC's the defending champion, and they are currently the 1 seed. Wembanyama's closing in on SGA for the MVP. I still think SGA will probably win it, but Wembanyama is going to win MVPs, plural. Now, to me, the one thing, he got injured last year, missed a big stretch of games, and that's the only thing that's going to stop him from becoming one of the greatest that's ever done it. It's crazy to watch him play, guys. Crazy. 7'5" with the biggest wingspan in the history of the league, and he's a great ball handler, excellent shooter, and basically takes everything that's anywhere near him and shot in his direction and throws it in the opposite direction. This is what Steve Kerr said about him last night. He's got unbelievable confidence now. He looks like he knows exactly what to do on both ends. His first couple of years, he looked young at times. He doesn't look young anymore. He just looks like he knows exactly what he's doing, dominating the glass. There are plays you can't do anything about. Several lobs where it looked like a Nerf hoop. He's brilliant. 301-230-0980. What is Victor Wembanyama to you? Have we ever seen anything like him? And can the Spurs win it all in his first year in the postseason? Rob in Frederick, go ahead.
I was telling you, guy that answers phone. Akeem Olajuwon was a pretty tall dude, and he was pretty agile and freaky too when he needed to be. But I don't know if he comes close to this, but that's about the closest comparison I can come up recently.
Well, look, Hakeem is one of my all-time favorite players. I've said this for many, many years. I don't think he gets his due in the conversation as one of the greatest centers of all time. I mean, it's not like he's forgotten by any stretch, but in terms of what you said, Hakeem was so different in that at 7 feet 270 or whatever he was, he just had so many moves offensively. I mean, he's truly one of the great defensive centers of all time. But on offense, he had, the patented, fade away on the baseline. He had the up and under. He had jump hooks. He could face from 15 and shoot the jump shot. Olajuwon was beyond ridiculously good. The thing that we missed out on, and it would have been great, just to see the Houston team that won in back-to-back years over the Knicks and over Orlando get to play those Bulls in a final. That would have been awesome to see. But after those two titles, remember, Olajuwon the next year, they got eliminated after in the second round. I would have loved to have seen those matchups because those were good Houston teams, and Rudy Tomjanovich was an excellent coach, but he wasn't like this outlier freak. Shaq was an outlier freak. Like, if we're going to talk about like how we felt in the moment, like Shaq's overwhelming physical dominance was something that honestly I don't think we had ever seen. Now, Shaq was not as, skilled as Olajuwon was in those days, or nowhere near Wemby. But in terms of just the way we felt in the moment, I think I've missed by not mentioning Shaq, because Shaq was so overpowering physically, and the way he would attack the rim and just dunk with somebody hanging on him, it didn't matter. That was an outlier, more so than Olajuwon was. But anyway, Rob, what else?
That's it. I was just going to say, I mean, you nailed it right on the thing. The defense is what always got me with Olajuwon. I mean, it's like he could kill you on the offensive side, but don't let him get near you on the defensive side because he could take that away from you too. So that's all.
Here's Hakeem. Hakeem was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 9-time All-Defensive First Team, 3-time was the blocked shot leader in the league. Yeah, I mean, Olajuwon was just ridiculous. And what's crazy about it is when he arrived, at the University of Houston to play for those great teams of the early 80s, he was a soccer player. He didn't start playing basketball until he was 16 years old. Anthony in D.C. Anthony, go ahead.
So, do I think they can do it? Yes. And I'm going to base it off of an unpopular opinion. I believe experience is overrated when it comes to sports. And the reason I say that is because you have to go out there and play the game. It's not like you're a doctor or anything and you have to do this specific procedure in a certain manner. You're out there, you're running around, you're playing basketball. I know history goes against what I'm saying, but the difference is, in my opinion, you rise up to the level of your opponent. That's all it is, in my opinion. The Bulls weren't good enough.
But I mean, the overrated part just it gets trumped by the results. Experience has always been what's won in the NBA playoffs. I mean, we've rarely seen what I'm asking you if we'll see this year. A team go from no playoffs the year before, and with so little playoff experience, straight to a title. It doesn't happen in that sport.
No, I agree. I agree it doesn't happen, but
Anthony, and I'm not going to cut you off. One of the reasons it's never happened, it's not so much. It's an experience thing for sure, but it's a physical maturity thing as well. I mean, a lot of the players are not at their physical maturity top until they're 26, 27, 28 years old, and they are true grown men playing against boys. And Wembanyama may, defy that because he's playing like a grown man. And even if he is a kid, he's a kid like we've never seen before in terms of what he can do and how he can affect and impact the final result on both ends of the floor.
Well,
go ahead.
I was getting ready to say that we can both agree that the Bulls weren't ready for the Pistons. The Pistons weren't ready for the Celtics, and that they weren't. The Pistons were a better team at the time they were beating up on the Bulls, and the Celtics were a better team at the time they were beating up on the Pistons. Yeah, there was maturity factors that played into it, but based on physical ability and what the team is capable of, I believe San Antonio can do it.
I'm not going to put it past
wrong,
them.
but
yeah,
right.
I'm not putting it past
before
them.
I go.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing before I go. You know how we both agree that the Big E was our man, and back in the day, you would read articles about him being called the Big Enigma and things such as that. Have you ever gone back on YouTube and watch highlights?
Yeah, of Elvin Hayes. Yes.
Yeah, man, it's funny how perspective changes. He was still my man, but man, was he a black hole.
Yeah, well, Phil will tell you that.
Of the time,
Chenier will tell you that. I mean,
that ball was not coming back out.
It wasn't coming back. It was not coming back very often. He was not, Wes was a great assist guy. Elvin wasn't, but Chenier's talked about that many times in the past, Anthony, is, the problem is once you gave it to the Big E, it wasn't coming back. But He produced good results most of the time. No, he
Oh,
was.
yeah.
By the way, he
produced.
was. We saw a shot of him during the tournament because he's on the radio broadcast team for the University of Houston, his alma mater.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to see him. He actually looked super healthy. He's sitting there, still a big dude. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it. Yeah. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Oklahoma City. Remember, last year was unusual in that the average age of the team was the youngest we had seen win a title in a long time. So there was that. But they had been in the postseason the year before, and they won a series. They swept New Orleans the year before and then lost in 6 to the Dallas team with Luka that made it to the NBA Finals and lost to the Celtics. By the way, that was a Dallas team that made it to the NBA Finals that didn't make the postseason the year before. But there was experience on that team. And yeah, I mean, they didn't go through years of wars, that's for sure, before they won it last year. But that's part of the conversation last year is you had 2 teams in the finals that didn't really have that experience. But that team was so good defensively. That Oklahoma City team that won last year was ridiculous on defense, and they're still very good defensively. I still would give Oklahoma City the advantage if it comes to a Western Conference final against San Antonio, and I would rely a little bit on their experience and their defense. Just, if you're wondering what the odds are, Oklahoma City's a pretty hefty favorite to win the title. Sort of the consensus has them at plus 130, nearly even money to win the NBA championship, not the tournament, the NBA championship, followed by now Boston at 5-1 and then San Antonio at 6-1. So yeah, San Antonio is not the favorite. They're not the favorite to win the Western Conference Finals. They're not the favorite to win the title. By the way, Boston emerging right now as a 5-1 second pick. That's a new thing, and a lot of it has to do with the injuries that the Pistons have had. All right, when we come back, we'll talk with Bobby Carpenter. Bobby Carpenter played in the NFL for a few years, played college football at Ohio State, does a lot for SiriusXM. Talk NFL draft, just talk NFL in general. Next, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Joining us right now, Bobby Carpenter, who played linebacker at Ohio State in the early 2000s, was with the Cowboys. Remember some of those matchups with the Skins when he was drafted in the first round by Dallas, played there for 4 years, bounced around in the NFL for a while. Bobby's been doing a great job in media. He is co-host of The Morning Juice in the mornings on 97.1 The Fan in Columbus. And he's done a lot of work on SiriusXM covering college football. We've had Bobby on the show before, and we are happy to have him back. So if I told you you're GM of an expansion team and you had to pick one of the following 4 Ohio State players with your first overall pick, Arvell Reese, Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs, or Sonny Styles, who would be the player that you would start your franchise with among those 4?
Ooh, it's from starting from scratch or trying to figure that whole thing out. I would probably stop because there's a lot of good options there, like you said, and probably all of them will go in the top 10. I would probably go with Sonny just because I'm a big believer in front to back, inside to out, and I think he's going to be that centerpiece of your defense for a long time. He checks all the boxes. He's big. He's physical. He's smart. He can help you in the run and the pass. He's got blitz ability as well, great coverage ability, and just really, rock solid of a human being. And so I would go with him to kind of start that defense off, start that team off, and start building around.
I don't know if you do this a lot, but, as fans, we do it a lot, especially this time of year. Do you have a comp for him?
It's tough because you look around, and the guy, I was just looking at some of his stuff again today, and I've known Sonny, full disclosure with that. He grew up in the town beside of me. My dad was our high school football coach, so I got to see him since he was a freshman in high school, develop to the man and player that he is today. And so you try to find comps for him of what he could be. And, it's tough because you start looking around and the guy with his ability, you start looking at potential all pros and stuff like that. And so I hate putting that on guys just because it's almost an unfair comparison to them, and it's almost a little disrespectful because you look at, what he could potentially do and just all the physicality that he brings to the table. I know, gosh, you put him in the right scheme and in the right defense, he's going to be an unbelievable player. I think he's almost scheme agnostic, but if you put him in the right spot, playing middle linebacker, he can do a ton of stuff for you.
So Washington, Bobby, has number 7 overall. They were horrendous defensively last year. At the end of last season, you could argue that it was the worst defensive team in the league. They suffered a lot of injuries, but it really didn't matter. They were just plain awful defensively. They fired their defensive coordinator. They hired Durante Jones, who worked for Brian Flores in Minnesota the last couple of years. They've played primarily a base 3-4, but we understand in the NFL, there's not a lot of base played. It's mostly nickel and beyond that. But where do you see his best fit? If they are, a 4 linebacker team, is he an inside backer in a 3-4, or is he a true middle linebacker in a 4-3?
I think you look at his size. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He even has frame room to grow. He could be 250 if you need to. I know the game has changed a lot, so you don't need linebackers that were, like when I was coming out weighing 255. That's not necessarily how it's played. He could play that strong inside for you. You talk about comps and everything. Guy you guys are familiar with a little bit, Bobby Wagner. I think he could be a guy like that for you. And I don't want to sit there and say he's a future Hall of Famer, but in a true 3-4-3, he can play the middle. He can play the strong inside, and he's never really been asked to do a lot of it. But I think with some skill development work, he's a guy that you can walk up on the edge as well. If you want to be multiple and move some guys around. So he has the type of physical traits that allow him to do that. It's just a function of a guy who played safety his whole career growing up, played nickelback for 2 years at Ohio State, and he's only really played linebacker for 2 seasons.
As a former Ohio State linebacker, did you see that's where it was headed or not? Because you said you've been very familiar with him going back to, his early.
Oh, Kevin, he was 6'1", 185 pounds as a freshman in high school. playing free safety. I'm like, there's zero chance this guy's staying there. He gets to Ohio State, comes in here, he's like 6'4", as a 17-year-old, about 220 pounds. And I looked at his dad, I'm looking at the strength coach, and I'm like, there's zero chance he stays at linebacker or at nickel. And they kept him there for 2 years. And that last year, I think he was starving himself to stay under 225, just from the fact like his body is very muscular and like ready to grow. You start lifting weights, man, and you're just going to swell up.
You know, you mentioned sort of the intangible stuff, and this is a head coach here in Dan Quinn who's been very heavy on culture. Bobby Wagner has been a big part of the transition from what was, you know, you're a football fan, a terrible culture and a terrible organization to something that doesn't even resemble what it used to be here. And Quinn gets a lot of credit for it, you know, the kind of people that he's brought in. And I think that's one of the things we sort of think of when we think of Styles, that not only would he be a great player, but he'd be a great culture fit. Do you see that fit with Washington and him, even if it's at 7?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because that's what I'm saying. That's why I would start it. You know, you talk about starting a franchise with it. I mean, he's a guy that he doesn't speak a ton. He's not the most vocal guy you're going to find, but every time he spoke at Ohio State, everybody listened because the guy does everything right all the time. His dad was an NFL player, played at Ohio State. It's a football family, what they grew up in. Like, he understands the burden of expectations and what that means and the responsibility that ultimately comes with it. So when I always saw that with him and would see him around, like, it was awesome to watch him lead men, pull guys together, say what needs to be said, give a guy a hand up when they need help. And then sometimes you got to come down on somebody when it needs to happen as well. And he was always willing to rise to the occasion for all of that.
Another guy that's been discussed as super high IQ and very high character is Caleb Downs. So tell me what kind of safety you think he's going to be at the NFL level.
What's funny is Eric Weddle just came through practice the other day, bringing his son. He's out in San Diego coaching high school football, and Eric's a year younger than me. And we had never played with him, had a lot of mutual connections and mutual friends. We spent some time at spring ball practice at Ohio State talking about it while his son's watching practice. And I told Eric, because he's like, man, Caleb looks good. I go, he reminds me a lot of you, to tell you the truth. Like,
Eric Weddle, by the way, if you missed what Bobby said, Eric Weddle, the longtime NFL safety, a lot of years with the Chargers.
Oh, and I think he's a Hall of Famer when it comes down to it. He's, I think, a 6-time All-Pro, team of the decades, 2010 decade. And, you know, very instinctive, really athletic, unbelievable tackler, understands the game, knows it as well as anybody. When you put all those things together, you have a guy back there that you can do a lot of things with. He can play some man, can play in the box, he can play deep. Guys that really don't have any deficiencies in their game are awesome for defensive coordinators because you never have to worry about, am I putting this guy in a bad spot, because they can always have success. And I think Caleb gives you a lot of that just the way that Eric Weddle did.
All right, another possibility. I mean, the reason I reached out to you is literally every single Ohio State, you know, first-round guy of the 4 that are guaranteed pretty much to go in the first round, they've all been mocked to Washington, probably with the exception of Reese. But we've seen a lot of Carnell Tate mocked to Washington as well. What kind of receiver is Carnell Tate going to be at the next level?
No, he's a tall, fast guy. He provides a ton of value. Like, people kind of, you know, knocked him on his 40 a little bit there. It's just like, you know, he had some issues running it. But dude, I challenge you this, and they played some really good competition during their time at Ohio State, and he got separation as much as he needed to. Tall, very fluid in and out of his routes. Great blocker down the field. A guy that came in kind of skinny, but worked his butt off and got up to 200 pounds. And so you can see that physicality now as part of his game. So he's a guy that's probably not going to be in a slot a ton for you. Could do it some, but probably a really solid guy that you're going to put on the outside that you can rely in winning when they're getting single coverage.
Are there similarities to Olave with Tate?
You know, some people have kind of said that. He's taller than Chris. Chris is only is maybe 6'1", 6'2". Like, you start looking at Carnell Tate. I mean, Carnell Tate is long. He's got some good length, long arms. Like, so he's a little bit bigger, very smooth route runner like Olave, where they're a lot faster than they look when they're coming at you because they're just so fluid in and out of their cuts, and they gobble so much up with their stride.
How good is Jeremiah Smith? I mean, you know, everybody's going to benefit from being on the other side of him. I think there's a chance, other than the quarterbacks, that he'll be the first non-quarterback off the board this time next year. What have you sort of witnessed in following his first 2 years in Columbus?
Well, the thing is, that's why I think Carnell was really special, because he was, viewed as the next guy up, and J.J. Smith comes in and lights the world on fire. And it takes a special guy to be able to kind of put your ego to the side and, be a team dude, go do what you need to do. And with the spotlight on JJ and everyone asking about him, still go out there and compete and be the type of guy you need to be. So I have the utmost respect for him because of that. And you look at Jeremiah, I mean, he's got all the physical traits and physical skills that you're looking for. And, you watch him just beat up on everybody. Dude's a relentless worker. He's one of the most physically developed kids I've ever seen come in at 18. And then I watched him work, and I understood why, just because the amount of effort that he puts in to training, not just running routes and then catching balls, but like lifting weights in the weight room, which not a lot of receivers like to do.
Of the edges that are going to go high in this draft, including Arvell Reese, Ohio State, and David Bailey, Texas Tech, and Ruben Bain, Miami, put them in order in terms of how you like them and how you view them and how you draft them.
Well, I think Bailey and Reese have a lot of similarities, just given what they were asked to do. They're not like a classic 4-3 defensive end. Because we start talking about edges, it's like we just play on the edge of the line of scrimmage. So those guys are more stand-up. Yeah, they can put their hand down. They could both go. Ruben Bain, I think, is more of a traditional classic hand in the ground, get after you, get in the 9 technique and go get after it with out of a track stance. He's a heck of a player. Don't get me wrong. You saw what he did in the playoff. He was incredible for Miami. I watched a little bit of Bailey this year, not as much as I would have liked to feel comfortable, like being able to make a full-on assessment of him. Arvell, like the thing with him is he came in, he was an underdeveloped guy, gained like 40 pounds while he was in school. I mean, he can play on the ball and off the ball. And so if you're looking for a defense that's going to be highly multiple, like that's what I love about Arvell is he's really good in space. And a lot of edge guys can struggle when you start putting them in space because they're just such downhill players all the time. When you watch Arvell, I mean, he can go front, back, side to side with his ease as he's going forward.
What do you think about Jeremiah Love as a running back prospect and as a potential top 7 pick in this draft?
He's one of the few running backs. I think you would put like a Bijan Robinson up there, guys that are home run hitters at running back. When you have a guy like that can always is a threat to take it the distance, has value out of the backfield as a receiver, can break tackles. But once you get him in space and you see the track speed come through, like he's a track guy, but a track guy that cuts really well. A lot of track guys are railroad runners. They always want to bounce it. He does a good job getting downhill, foot in the ground. And then when he puts his foot in the ground, man, you watch him take off and just accelerate with such tremendous explosion. And so it's fun to watch him. I think he's a top 10 guy. I mean, I think he might be the best, like, non-quarterback offensive prospect that you're going to find in this draft, just with how he can impact the game.
All right, last one for you, just because I love Saturdays as much as I do Sundays. I mean, you look ahead to next year, and people are saying this might be Ryan Day's most talented team in Columbus. They're going to probably be a consensus preseason number 1 to start 2026. Do you agree? Is it the most talented team he's had?
Interesting. I thought last year was maybe even more talented than 24, but it comes down to being able to see guys develop. And so there's a long way that it needs to go before you can get to that point. They've got some guys that have made some plays. At Ohio State, they brought in some transfers like James Smith, Quay Rousseau from Alabama. Both those guys are really talented. Earl Little, really good player. I mean, they've got some dudes that have come in that you can see. Christian Allegro, those are the defensive guys. You can tell they might have 4 first-round draft picks on defense. So you've got a lot to replace. I think that there's potential for that. And probably the 2 things just going to hinge on is how good does Julian Sayin get? How much does he develop from his first year as a starter to his second? And then how much does this offensive line really coalesce? And they were good last year, but then against Indiana and Miami, there was a little bit of struggles. Can they step up and be one of the dominant offensive lines with really 4 starters returning?
Do they open up with that rematch with Texas in Austin? Is that their opening game?
I don't think it's the opening game. I think it's the second game this year. I don't believe that it's the opening.
It is. They open up with Ball State at home, and then they go to Austin week 2. That will be a rather large game early in the season with Arch Manning back. Bobby, thanks so much. Really good information. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime.
Yep. Bobby Carpenter, everybody. There you go. Styles at 7. Man, doesn't he sound like the kind of player that they want in their locker room? Not to mention a great player who, by the way, tested off the charts, high relative athletic score, the whole thing. And then they're looking for a guy to be the green dot, to be the communicator, to be the IQ on the football field. Can he do that as a rookie? Man, they've got, in those 4 players, the players that we talked about, I don't see Reese at 7 to Washington, but of the other 3, Downs, Styles, and Tate, it certainly sounds like everything you read and everybody you talk to, including, Bobby Carpenter, you're not only getting 3 really good players, but you're getting 3 high quality and high IQ people as well. I think pretty good chance that one of those 3 ends up being the pick at 7. Again, I know that there are a lot of people that love and put him on the level of Bijan. I don't love the player. If they end up picking him, I'm going to be excited to see him in the backfield with Jaden Daniels. I think it's too high, though, for him at running back. When we come back, Dwayne Simpkins will jump on with us. We'll talk to Dwayne about the Final Four coming up on Saturday night and then a Monday night championship. He's done a great job at AU as the head coach there for 3 years. We'll go back down memory lane a little bit with Dwayne as well. That's next.
Simpkins is going to handle the basketball. Let's see if he angles his way to the right side to try to get to Smith. Simpkins with the ball. Simpkins makes the move. Simpkins himself. Simpkins got it. 3.5 seconds left. Remember the shot clock. The game clock stopped. Here comes Millen. He didn't get it on. Maryland pulls off the upset of 15th ranked Georgetown. The final in overtime, Maryland 84 and Georgetown 83. Oh, what a big win for Gary Williams. What a terrific win for him.
All the way back in November of 1993 at what was then, it was called US Air Arena. Of course, it was the old Capitol Center in Landover. And that shot by my guest, Dwayne Simpkins, handed Gary Williams his first signature win at Maryland, a memorable game in the history of Maryland basketball. That was Maryland versus Georgetown for the first time in 12 years. That rivalry had gone dormant, but was resurrected on that particular day, the day after Thanksgiving, in November of 1993. Dwayne is the head basketball coach at American University. He's done a great job there for the last 3 years. Of course, Dwayne started at DeMatha, played for the great Morgan Wooten before coming to Maryland. He is a DMV basketball lifer, no question about that. We'll get to the Final Four, but we got to go down memory lane a little bit with you on the show. So how many times do you get asked, how often do you get asked about that shot in that game?
I'm blessed, man, to obviously still be in the DMV, and I come across people on a regular basis. Yeah, I'll say once every 2 weeks or something like that, maybe. But it's really cool. What's even cooler is when I'm away from home or when out of town, I'm recruiting or whatever, and could run into an Uber driver, could run into someone in the airport, and they mention how they became whether it be college basketball fans or in particular fans of the Maryland Terps basketball program by that game. So that's always really cool.
It was such an interesting game because it introduced all of us to Joe Smith and Keith Booth, but nobody knew what Joe Smith was going to be, and that was his very first game. And Gary's told me many times we knew what was coming. Jimmy P's told me many times we knew. We saw it in practice. When did you know? What do you remember? Because that was your sophomore year. You guys were off probation, and you opened with Georgetown, and it's Joe Smith and Keith Booth's debut. It's you and Exree Hip and of course Johnny Rhodes' second year.
Yeah.
So what do you remember about when you guys knew Joe Smith was going to be special?
Man, I could tell you it was a Sunday night. It was our very first time playing pickup ball as a team when everybody was on campus. And many people may not remember, but there was a guy by the name of Nemanja Petrovic, and Nemanja was going to be, he was the incumbent starting center because, he played the year before and he had good size, he played like European basketball and, stretched the court and everything, good hands, good fit, good IQ. But that night, Joe destroyed Nemanja. I mean, completely destroyed him. And, I'll fast forward the very next day, I'm coming out of class, I get back to my suite and guys come up to me, hey man, you heard about Nemanja? I'm like, nah, what's wrong? He all right? I said, yeah, Nemia's transferring. And so that was,
really?
Nemanja knew Joe was special too. And he said, nah, I'm going to go somewhere else and play. But yeah, we knew Joe was special from day one.
That's a great story. I'm sure you get this maybe on social media, but as a Maryland guy and as a Maryland, alum and fan, I get all the videos that are sent out by social media teams at Maryland with, on this date, back in whatever.
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah. And last week, it was like, the anniversary of that second win in the 94 tournament over UMass. You guys were a 10 seed, beat St. Louis in the first round, and then got the 2 seed, UMass in the second round. The UMass team that had Lou Rowe and Marcus Camby and was coached by Calipari. And I retweeted that highlight and I said, this was the we're back game. As much as the Georgetown game was kind of a kickoff to, okay, we're going to be good again, that was the day it was like, Maryland basketball is back. We're back in the Sweet 16. What do you remember about that tournament and that game against UMass in particular?
You know, if you go back that year, this was early in the season, early in the non-conference. We actually played UMass in Springfield, Mass. I forgot the name of the tournament, and like they beat us. I mean, it wasn't like we lost. No, they beat us, and they were talking trash at the end of the game. You know, Dante Bright, who was one of their star players, McDonald's All-American, myself, Dante, and Keith all played AAU ball together. So Keith was just like, Dante was mouthing off like, I was just like, man, just a bad feeling. So fast forward, Selection Sunday, when our name comes up and we see that we're not only in the same bracket, but like we could potentially play them the second game. Oh man, like there was already some fuel to the fire with that. So I give them credit because they were up pretty big in during that game in Wichita, and we just continued to chip away. And I specifically remember, I think the game-changing play or shot for us, Mario Lucas hit a big-time three.
Yeah.
The game, it lit by a shot. Like, it was a terrible shot.
Well, he took a lot of terrible shots.
No, he did. But that one was a terrible one, but it was so big. It built that momentum going into it, man. And I think that game just gave us so much confidence for the rest of the tournament, but in particular for the following season to know, like, hey, man, like we can be very, very good.
Yeah, I've asked Gary about Mario Lucas at times. I'm like, that dude checked in shooting. Like, he literally was at the scores table. And once he checked in, he was like, I'm open. And that was him, man. He was not afraid to fire it.
No. Mario, sometimes you had to check him, man, in practice. Like, Mario, that's not a good shot. But, Mario had a ton of confidence, man. And his thing was, hey, man, I'm bringing something to the table. When you guys bring me in off the bench, I'm bringing something to the table. So you knew what you were going to get out of him. Whether he made it or missed it, you know he was going to put the ball up from three.
Yeah, that win over UMass, the second half was unbelievable. And you guys ended up losing in the Sweet 16 to the Fab Five minus Weber. Weber had gone, but the rest of them were there. Jalen Rose was there. Juwan Howard was there. Jimmy King, Ray Jackson, they were all there. And, it was a competitive game that Michigan won. And then the next year was a year where we were ranked in the top 10 the entire year and went in as a 2 seed, I think. And, that was Gary says about that Sweet 16 loss to UConn, that everybody was, I think, sick for that game. Was that the deal? Like no one felt well or something about that particular game.
I think a couple guys were sick and everything, man. But I just remember like the first 4 minutes of that game, and we were a high scoring team. I want to say it was us and Carolina that was, top 5 in the country out of the ACC in scoring and everything. And we played with pretty good speed. And I just remember the very first TV timeout, we come to the bench. You can see it in everybody's eyes. It's like, yo, these dudes are faster than us. Like, they played really, really fast. And, they had Kevin Ollie and they had, Ray Allen was on that team. They had 5 guys that ended up making the NBA. And, it was a bad matchup for us. It really was. And, it's funny. I go back and I think about what could have been in that year. And we had a terrible game, terrible loss at Georgia Tech in the early in conference play. And I firmly believe if we don't lose that game, and we turn around, we end up beating North Carolina, who was ranked number 1 the following week. But I firmly believe if we win that game and we do everything else that we were supposed to do, our seeding may be a little bit different, and maybe we don't face a team like UConn until maybe the Elite Eight or something like that. But hindsight's 2020.
Well, that game against North Carolina when they were number 1, that was as lit as Cole Fieldhouse has ever been. That night was a special night, for sure. And then, look, I've asked Gary about this game too many times, but I know I haven't asked you about it. But the Steve Nash game the next year, this is your final year. And your final chance to play in the NCAA tournament. You guys draw Santa Clara in the first round of the tournament. I think Gary always blames Billy Hahn's scout or Jimmy's scout. I forget which one it was. But what did you guys know about Steve Nash, and when did you figure out he was really good?
Well, I figured out after the game, I looked at the stats. She's like, damn, he had a triple-double,
Yeah.
We knew going into the game he was talented and everything. But, it's like, hey, we're with Maryland from the ACC. We've been to 2 Sweet 16s, you know. So I'm not saying that we overlooked him at all, but like he was a special player. I mean, hell, he's in a Hall of Fame, you know. So very good player. And I mean, the other thing too, that year, I think, and this is something that I take with me now as a coach and understanding how every single year you got a different team, no matter how many guys are coming back. I mean, it's a completely different team. And for us, I thought that we struggled that entire year to make up for Joe Smith's presence. You know, I think everybody subconsciously felt like, oh, 20 points and 10 rebounds and 2 blocks are going out the door. And I think everybody felt the pressure to like try to have to make up for it to some degree.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just don't think that we maximize our potential. I put a lot of that on myself, man, as a point guard of the team. I'm sure Gary will probably feel the same way as a coach, but you know, I felt that year, I think we struggled with trying to find our identity and trying to make up for the fact that Joe wasn't there.
What's your favorite all-time game that you were a part of at Maryland?
The Carolina game is right up there. That's got to be, I would say that's probably ahead of the Georgetown game, quite honestly.
Yeah.
You know, selfishly, I made the game-winning shot and everything. But for us to be down, I think we're down 16 points in the first half.
Right.
And Cole Fieldhouse, like you said, it's always been wild in there and loud, but that particular night, man, was just on a completely different level. The game down in Cameron when we beat Duke, you know, Coach Williams unfortunately was at home. I think he had the flu or it was something. He was in a bad shape, and
pneumonia.
Billy Hahn had to sub in, and he had pneumonia, and Billy Hahn had to sub in, man, and to get a game-winning basket on Cameron on the court of Cameron Indoor Stadium, you know, that was pretty awesome too.
All right. Dwayne is the coach at AU. AU had a decent season. Of course, last year you guys made it to the tournament, and then you lost your best player, unfortunately, in that first game to injury. But tell me how it's going at AU. I mean, you've had some decent teams.
Yeah, we've been fortunate, man. We've got some high character kids coming from great families. You know, the student body has been really, really good last year in particular, man. We made that run and we won like 7 or 8 games in a row, and you could just start to see the momentum just picking up. And, you know, someone showed me some pictures and videos of our championship game that we hosted last year against Navy. And to see the line of people all going from Bender Arena all the way up to Massachusetts Avenue, man, like, you know, the school hasn't had that in quite some time. So it's great, man, to be a part of that. I feel really, really proud of the fact that we've done a really good job with our retention. You know, this year, I mean, knock on wood, we're still not through the woods yet, but right now we have every single person coming back from last year's team. You know, a team that features 6 freshmen. You know, our leading scorer was a freshman, and he's a higher level player. There's no doubt about it. But he values the education that he's going to get here. He values his role on our team, and I think it speaks to our culture, not just with him, but all the guys in our program. That's something that I'm really proud of, and I take a lot of I stick my chest out a little bit because we work very diligently, my staff and I, man, just making sure that these guys are being poured into every single day. Every day is not easy. I think we tell those guys that when we recruit them, and you know, we try to identify guys that for them it's cool they get some money, and we'll try to take care of them with NIL and everything, but they're not coming here solely for the money. And from a recruitment standpoint, I think that's where we've done a pretty good job. We try not to stay away from those guys. If they're coming through the door already with their eye on how much can I get paid, like, all right, this is not the type of kid for us. He could be a good player. He could be very productive somewhere else, but he's not going to be for us.
Yeah, that's the challenge with that level, right? The Patriot Leagues of the world is once you land on somebody great. I mean, that's incredible that you had so many freshmen and you have a really good freshman and he's coming back. That speaks really highly of you. I mean, that's a real testament to you and your staff, because I'm sure there were, opportunities, and you guys were, you played well. You had it was basically a buzzer beater that you got beat on against BU, against Boston in the quarterfinals of the Patriot League Championship. So, and you finished in the middle of the pack for the most part, with a super young team. So that's got to be encouraging that you get that kid back and you got a shot next year.
No, it is, and what's also important to me, you never know. Basketball guys that work in mysterious ways. I mean, we had 3 kids that were out with season-ending injuries, and every single one of those kids could have started for us. 2 of them were slated to start for us, so we didn't have them. If they were here this year, who knows? Maybe we're losing guys to the portal because I firmly believe, just like the one freshman that I mentioned, Madden Collins, I mean, he led us in scoring, rebounds, and assists, and blocks. And I don't think he's as productive from a statistical standpoint if we are whole. And so with those guys being out, maybe it allowed for us to get a fresh reset. And now we're in position to bring everybody back from that team and make the look a run next year in the Patriot League.
Dwayne Simpkins is 32-22 in the Patriot League as a head coach in 3 years at AU, 54-45 overall. And, he's been grinding at this thing for a while. And I know there are a lot of people that really think you're doing a phenomenal job and are excited for, what your future has in terms of coaching. A point guard from the beginning, and he got a chance to play for Morgan Wooten and Gary Williams. Not bad. All right, let's talk about the tournament. I'm sorry?
I'll just say 2 of the best. 2 of the best to ever put a whistle around their neck.
No doubt. All right, let's talk Final Four. First of all, let's just go backwards and talk about the UConn-Duke game. Tell me from a coaching perspective what Duke didn't do correctly on that final offensive possession where they turned it over and lost on a 35-footer at the buzzer.
Man, I find it amazing. It's almost comical to hear the number of people who are like replaying it 10 different times and saying they should have done that. They should have did this. And dude, if you have not been in that position where the bullets are flying and like you don't have a timeout and like everything is bang, 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 I mean, it's difficult. People saying, hey, Boozer should have just held the ball. Well, guess what? If he held the ball and he gets tied up, UConn's got possession.
Right.
So like, scratch that off. I hear so many people say that, like, no, he couldn't just cover the ball up because it's a jump ball. UConn gets it. He does the right thing. He's got 2 people kind of on him. He gets the ball, I think, to Sarr. And Sarr hits the open man, Caden Boozer. And if there's anything that I would say in that position, as a point guard, me personally, I shot 84, 85% from free throw line. I get that ball, I'm going to dribble it. But I'm not going to pass it. Like, you got to come take the ball off me. But more times than not, you're probably going to foul me. If there's anything that I would say I wish you would do differently, and this is what we preach to our guys, we have a saying, fake a pass and make a pass. Like, if he gets that ball out of his hands cleanly, if he fakes it and he gets it out of his hands, it's a ball game. And everybody's talking about what UConn should have done to put themselves in position to win. So I'm very empathetic, man, to players and coaches in that position, man, because everything is going so fast. And in that situation, you're hoping that things fall the way that they're supposed to, but that's not the way the game of basketball works all the time.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. All right, and you were an excellent free throw shooter and looked to get fouled. I remember a lot of those games. You wanted the ball in your hands, and you wanted to be the guy at the free throw line, and you made a lot of big time clutch free throws during your time at Maryland.
Kevin, I had to, man, because I had guys that shot all the damn balls, between Joe and Keith and Johnny and X. It's like I might have shot 6 times that game. I'm just like, hey, just keep it close so I can make some free throws and double figures. So
some of your big games, you had double digit free throws, which was perfect. But you also were such a good ball handler. There weren't turnovers at the end, so they had to foul you. All right, let's get to these matchups. UConn and Illinois. Who do you like and why?
I like Illinois. Man, they got such great positional size. They're a tremendous offensive rebounding team, one of the best in the country. And like I say, with the positional size, man, they're going to pose a ton of problems for UConn. UConn, big fella in the middle is a very good player, but they get smaller. Caravan has got good length, but in terms of the girth and size, he's going to have to guard some guys who are in the post a little bit. And the kid Keaton Wagler at the point guard position, man, like he can make shots and he can pass the basketball. He can facilitate. I just think from a holistic perspective, they have too many weapons, and like again, their positional size I think may overwhelm UConn. But I'm not going to discount or count UConn out, man, from the toughness. I mean, all the things they've gone through this year. They get blown out in the Big East Championship at St. John's. They're down 19 points this weekend. You can never count a Danny Hurley led team at all.
Dwayne, does anybody run more stuff and maybe have a thicker playbook than Danny Hurley?
I would say the only person in the past that I've seen, the two guys, Mark Schmidt, who's just stepped down this year at St. Bonaventure. Whenever I was at Mason, I always had to scout against St. Bonaventure. And you talking about somebody, man, who had an extensive playbook. And it's like, not only did he have numerous plays, but he had numerous wrinkles and numerous options off of these things. And it made it so that instead of having 15 plays, it was almost like 50 or 60 plays. And then Bob Hoffman, who used to be the coach at Mercer when I was at UNC Greensboro, I always had to scout against his Mercer teams. You talking about a tactical, he's a clinician, man, from an offensive perspective. And Mike Young's another one, too, who's at Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
He was in the same league at the time at Wofford. Those coaches, man, they will dice you up. But, Hurley does a really good job. If you really watch it, and I've done it for the past couple of years and looking at their offense and everything, it's more simplistic than you think. What he does is he layers. In our coaching profession, we call layering offense, where you may have these 6 or 7 plays, but out of these 6 or 7 different plays, each one of them may start in a different look. It could start with an Iverson cut. It may start in a box cut, but it's the same play. But it gives the perception and the illusion that it's a completely different play. But I love their all ball movement. I love their all ball screening. There's not a lot of wasted dribbling and just random ball screens that you see a lot in college basketball and definitely in high school and AAU. So he does a really, really good job.
All right. So you like Illinois. Are the two best teams Michigan and Arizona, and who do you like in that one?
Hands down. Yeah, hands down. I think those are two best teams. I got Arizona. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be a very, very physical game. Arizona has always been good, man, year in, year out. What Tommy Lloyd has done this year, I think, to help elevate his program and this particular team, their physicality, everybody looks and sees West Coast teams and they think that they're going to be a little bit more softer, they're going to be more skilled. He has done a great job of combining the skill and toughness. They're a very good defensive team. They got very good positional strength, positional size. And the one thing that they do more than anybody else, they truly play inside out. They're going to try to bludgeon you in around the basket. And I think when the game slows down like it is at this point in the season, if they can make free throws, they're going to have a really, really good chance of winning this whole thing.
Do you have a view? You're a DC guy, and I don't know how closely you're following the Wizards rebuild, but they're going to end up with a very high pick in the upcoming draft. And, it's DeBonsa from BYU and Peterson from Kansas and Cam Boozer and Acuff and Ament and all of these guys. Did you watch enough to have a strong opinion on who you hope the Wizards end up getting?
I mean, DeBonsa he's a generational talent, with that kind of size and length and the fluidity to handle the basketball. He's pretty solid defensively. I think if you got a chance to get a kid like that, you got to do it. Aaron Peterson, I watched him earlier in the season. I watched him late in the season too, but there's some health stuff there. But if he is healthy, man, it's very difficult to possibly pass him up as well. Those two in particular, and then Caleb Wilson in North Carolina. A lot of people don't talk about him enough. I think he's another one almost in that DeBonsta conversation with that position. You know, people fail to realize, like, you just can't randomly let's go get all these top flight guys and everything from a budgetary standpoint when you're talking about your roster construction. There's a cap. You know, it's no different than being in the NBA. Like, you may have 2 max guys and you got to fill in the roster with the other ones. You know, 2 things got to happen. One, you got to stay healthy. You know, if the big kid Farrell doesn't get hurt, you know, I'm not saying they're going to be a tournament team, but they won't be as bad as they were this year. And then secondly, it's a roll of the dice, man. You really got to be conscious of the pieces that you are constructing to make up the whole of your team. If certain pieces just don't fit, and I think that there were a lot of pieces that didn't quite fit. You know, I don't think they had a point guard. I didn't think they had shooting ability. You know, these boxes got to be checked. You know, and especially in the Big Ten. And that's the other thing I would give Buzz some grace with is, like, first time here at Maryland, first time coaching against Big Ten competition. Every league has a different, you know, makeup, has a different cadence to it. I think that, you know, him going through this full year, I think is going to give him some more experience to be armed with to put the roster together the way that it probably should be, that he may want it to be, and then 2, be able to execute night in and night out in the Big Ten.
Thanks for doing this, Dwayne. Really enjoyed it. Love having you on and really rooting for you. I know a lot of people in town are. Best of luck next year. Take care. Enjoy the Final Four this weekend.
Thanks so much, Kevin. All the best to you, man.
Dwayne Simpkins, everybody, doing a great job at American University. How about this, Max, from the Wizards? They're apologizing for last night's April Fool's joke. Now, I don't think this is April Fool's because it's April 2nd, but they put out a statement on their X account. Quote, "We apologize for last night's April Fool's joke that left many wondering if we had misled a fan. This skit involving our mascot and other members of our performance team was scripted and intended to celebrate the day. All participants were in on the joke, but we missed the mark. Our fans are our priority, and we continue to be committed to providing a positive experience to all who attend games." Closed quote. There you go. He was in on it. Talked about this earlier in the show. All right. We are done for the day. Chris is next.